Hi, everyone. Today I'm going to share my book report on Waking the Tiger by Peter Levine. I've actually read this book a few times because my report is so late, but it was not a chore. This book really opened my eyes and changed the way that I think about trauma. I used to see trauma mainly as an emotional or psychological experience. Even when the trauma was physical, I still kind of thought of it mostly on emotional terms. And what Peter Levine explains and believes is that trauma is actually a biological process. It happens when our natural survival responses like fight, flight, or freeze don't get completed. I also realized that, uh, you know, most of my life I've heard of fight or flight, and that freeze doesn't actually get talked about as often. But it's definitely just as important, and in some cases, it's even the best survival choice. The title, Waking the Tiger, comes from a story about an impala being chased by a tiger. And once the danger passes, the impala doesn't hold on to fear. Instead, it stands up. It trembles and shakes and trembles and shakes, and it's releasing the stress from its body. And in doing so, it's resetting the nervous system, and then it walks away and moves on with life. Animals don't carry trauma the way humans do. We, on the other hand, often suppress these natural responses, or we label them as weakness or failure. We advise others, don't worry about it. It's in the past. You'll get over it. It'll be okay. And Peter Levine shows us that these responses, physical responses of trembling and shaking and tears, are actually the body's built-in way of healing, and that we shouldn't suppress them. I actually had a real life experience that helped me understand this. I'd love to share. And it's many years ago when with my 4-year-old Jake. So Jake was playing outside with our neighbor's little girl while my husband and my neighbor were tossing a baseball around playing catch on the street. I was in the house, and when I came outside, I noticed Jake's bike was overturned on the sidewalk and there were no kids. He wasn't there. And so panic set in immediately, and we began our search, calling their names. Soon other neighbors joined in. I got in my car and circling the neighborhood again and again. I was very focused, but I was terrified. And each time I drove back home to check in to see if he was found and he wasn't there, my fear grew stronger. Terrible things were going through my mind. Finally, when I pulled in one more time, I saw my husband holding Jake, and relief overwhelmed me. I ran over, I grabbed Jake, I hugged him tight, and then I could feel my body starting to go. I quickly gave him back to my husband. I couldn't hold him because I started shaking uncontrollably. Tears were just pouring out, and my body was just shaking from head to toe, and I could barely stand. I thought I was going to faint. One of my neighbors was holding me up. So looking back, I understand better what was happening. During the search, I was in survival mode, probably my fight response. I was very focused. I was determined. I was running on adrenaline. And once I knew Jake was safe, the danger had passed, my body released all that pent up stress, all the adrenaline and the cortisol that was pent up and moving through my body. It was releasing it through the shaking and the tears. And when I've shared this story in the past, I always described it as, I sort of had a breakdown. It clearly wasn't. It was my body resetting itself. And that's what Levine teaches, that trauma isn't just emotional, it's biological, and that the body needs to complete its cycle. And when it does, healing happens. As humans, we often suppress our emotions, which results in not properly releasing trauma so that surge of energy can be released. This suppression can leave the trauma unresolved and manifest as anxiety, depression, dissociation, chronic stress. It can affect our relationships, establish fears and triggers, etc., etc. There were a lot of powerful insights in this book, and some that really stood out for me is that trauma isn't always from a single dramatic event. It can come from something small, could be everyday stresses that remain dormant and accumulate over time. It can be a medical procedure where trauma occurs at the cellular level, which I had never known before. And sometimes we don't know where the trauma comes from. Also, healing does not require reliving painful stories. Healing can happen through the body by completing what was unfinished. And also, small gradual steps are safer and more effective than trying to force a major breakthrough. And this protects the nervous system from becoming overwhelmed. And finally, symptoms are not flaws, but signs of unfinished energy that we can focus on and heal from, especially during breath work. So many of the teachings and practices in that book actually integrate into how we lead breathwork sessions. And as facilitators, we all know it's important to recognize anxieties and stress and other symptoms because these are actually signals of physical blocks that the body hasn't released yet. And we can use this in our frames when we talk to our breathers. We can help people see that freezing or doing nothing isn't a weakness, and it's a natural survival strategy. And through breath work, by gently bringing awareness to physical sensations, we can create conditions for deep healing. And the language we use really matters, like encouraging body awareness, resourcing, moving slowly, staying present, trusting the body, trusting the breath. This creates a safe space where trauma can resolve and the nervous system can reset. And healing isn't just about returning to normal. It's about reclaiming our wholeness and a deeper sense of connection to ourselves. Opportunities that I take away for my own personal growth are seeing that our responses to trauma are protective rather than shameful, and also developing our resilience so that when we face discomfort, we don't get overwhelmed. It's our emotional resilience. And also trusting the body and the breath to show us how to heal. I think that's really important. And also body awareness. Can't stress that enough, that always listening and feeling sensations and treating them as messages are so important. Waking the Tiger was a fascinating read, and I think it aligns beautifully with the practice of breath work. It has certainly shifted how I understand trauma, and I'll be carrying these lessons with me every time I guide a session. This is a book not just about trauma, but about resilience, body's wisdom, and the power of healing. I would encourage everyone to read this very powerful book. Thanks for listening.